Hi, we're back.
Well, now we're back.
Hi,
Hey.
we're trying
So
this.
we deleted all of that and we're just starting over. Um,
We had a storm earlier, and
yeah.
um,
I want to assure you that when we teach our class, we use Zoom. It seems more stable, and I've never had an outage that was a real problem for a Zoom video. But whatever. We should be back, and it would be nice again if somebody would post a comment to say that they can hear us at this point.
I lost them.
That's scary.
Maybe it's the
I think they
cable.
have to log back in or
Well,
go to a different live page. The old live page
I don't know. I think you
has
just have to
been
be on.
ended.
Well,
Oh,
oh
good.
yay.
All right.
Okay, so
I
anyway,
think the comments are really delayed because, yeah, we're good. So the short version of what she said is that a mortgage is just a financing device. It doesn't mean that the bank owns your house. It doesn't mean it isn't a cash sale. In fact, it's still a cash sale.
as if you're doing the exam and there's a scenario where the seller walks away with cash in his pocket, all cash in his pocket, it's going to be a cash sale. Whether the buyer puts down $5 or 95% of the purchase price, that is a cash sale. The rest of the balance of the cash can come from Uncle Joe. It can come from the bank. It can come from savings and loan. It can come from an inheritance. That's a cash sale.
They could come all from the
It can
buyer.
come. No, it can come all from the buyer. It can be
Right.
100% cash. The buyer can walk in with $200,000 in $1 bills, and that'll be a cash sale. If it is financed through a financing institution, that financing institution will have certain legal rights against the house. You own the house, the buyer owns the house, but the financing institution will have a right to repossess your home with taking certain legal steps. That's called a lien against the home. Um, if you fail to make payments, it's a contract you take out with that financing institution. The buyer takes out with the financing institution. That's all that the mortgage is a contract between the buyer and the financing institution.
So there's really like two transactions going on at a closing. Could be just one. The buyer and the seller agree to buy and sell,
If
and then
there's just all
if
cash.
it's all cash. But at the closing, if there's a bank or financing institution, I'm just going to keep saying bank, though it could be Quicken Loans or whatever. Financing institution is the one financing it. Then there's this other agreement going on between,
It's like a side bet. If you go to the casino,
yeah,
they're making a bet on you that you're going to pay all that money back.
and that's just between the buyer and the bank. The seller couldn't care less. Wherever the money comes from, I'm walking away with the money. And in that sense, the one who's taking out the mortgagor, is actually the individual or the homeowner, the buyer. The mortgagee is the bank. They're not giving a mortgage, they're taking a mortgage. They're giving the money and they're taking the mortgage from the borrower, which is the buyer.
And they will have some primacy or um, some rights ahead of other debtors uh, that the buyer may have. Like if they get into a lot of credit card debt or something and they have to do a bankruptcy, they'll have some advantages in that situation.
Yeah,
That's
that's intuitive because you know that the banks have the power to say we're first in line when we've got to collect. I will say though, there's going to be one situation we'll talk about later where the bank isn't first in line, and
which
you're
is the
very
next one we're going to talk about.
okay.
It's is a credit sale where it's not the buyer's not financing the money from a lending institution. The buyer is financing the money with the seller. It's a seller finance situation. And that can be any amount of money from the seller. If the buyer walks in with 95% of the money and 5% of the money comes from the seller, say it's a $200,000 house and the buyer has $195,000 and the seller is going to finance $5,000, that's a credit sale. If the buyer has $5,000 and the seller has $195,000 that he's going to finance, that's a credit sale. As long as the seller does not walk away with all of the cash, that's a credit sale.
And it's a weird terminology because you would think, oh, I'm buying a house as a cash sale and I'm getting a mortgage, and mortgage is credit. So it's a credit sale. No, the term credit sale is synonymous with owner financing, or they call sale with vendor's privilege, sale with vendor's lien. All of these are credit sale. And it's weird because you would think, credit would mean something like a credit card company or a bank, or it's not. The only time it's a credit sale is when the seller themselves is financing it by saying, I will accept less now at closing. House is still yours.
Mm-hmm.
It's immediately yours. But you owe me over time, or even a month from now as a balloon payment, but however it's arranged. You owe me these future payments. Why would anybody do that? Well, they could probably get a better interest rate
They
than
may
they,
not have perfect credit.
and everybody trusts everybody. Plus, to some extent, the seller is okay with the buyer not having the money eventually because they'll foreclose.
And the good thing for the seller is he will always be first in line. No matter what happens, there will never be an entity that will trump him in any kind of financial dispute. If he goes to bankruptcy, if he goes to any kind of situation where there's there will never be a lien that is first in line beyond him.
The fancy way of saying that is that the vendor's privilege is stronger than a mortgage. It's stronger than credit card debt. It's first in line. So it looks like the vendor's privilege is just taking out a mortgage, but taking it out from the seller instead of from a bank. But they don't want to call it a mortgage. They want to call it a vendor's lien or vendor's privilege because it is so much stronger than a mortgage. It puts them first in line. Now, there are filing requirements you have to do in a certain amount of time that the study guide points out to make it truly a vendor's lien and not just some kind of debt. And so you definitely could be tested on that, but you don't have to memorize those as long as you know where to find them in the credit sale part of Chapter 21.
And another type of sale that looks similar to a credit sale but is not a sale at all until the final payment is made is a bond for deed. This appeals particularly to people who may not have very good credit. It's kind of a lease purchase. Like if you go to one of these rent-a-center places and you pay $20 a week for your washing machine, and then the final payment you pay $1, and then you own the washing machine. It's that, but for houses. That's a bond for deed.
Yeah, and like the Aaron Rents or Rent-A-Center thing, you don't actually own that refrigerator or washing machine until that last payment's made. They can come and repossess it without any problem. And this is weird, but you don't own the house you're living in when you do rent to own. Essentially, it's like a rent to own. They don't call it rent to own, but the bond for deed is a promise to buy in the future or a promise to sell in the future, but there's no ownership that changes hands immediately. And I know they test on that if they give you a scenario where it's clear that ownership changes from seller to buyer, then it's one of these other kinds of forms. It might be